Hello everyone, welcome to another video by Future Doc Explains. In today's video, we'll be going through the cardiovascular system. There will be 5 sections to this video. First, we will discuss an introduction to the circulatory system. Second, we will go through the parts of the heart and the blood flow through the heart. Third, we will go through arteries, veins, and capillaries. Fourthly, we will go through the coronary arteries and the coronary veins. And lastly, we'll close off with a cardiac conducting system. So first, an introduction to the circulatory system. The circulatory system is composed of 2 parts. It's composed of the cardiovascular system and the lymphatic system. Today, we will specifically focus on the cardiovascular system, and in a later video, we will go through the lymphatic system. The cardiovascular system can be further divided into the pulmonary circulation and into the systemic circulation. The pulmonary circulation is going to be the circulation dealing with the lungs, and the systemic circulation is going to be the circulation dealing with the body. So now let's discover the parts of the heart. So first we're going to go through the chambers of the heart. There are 4 chambers to the heart that are very crucial to know. There's the right atrium, there's the right ventricle, there's the left atrium, there's the left ventricle. First things first, anything dealing with the right side of the heart is going to be deoxygenated blood, so it will be denoted in blue, and this is directly related to the pulmonary circulation. It's deoxygenated, so it needs to go to the lungs to become oxygenated. Anything dealing with the left side of the heart is going to be in red because it's oxygenated, and so this is going to deal with the systemic circulation because we want to take oxygenated blood to the parts of the body. Another thing to note is that the atrium is always going to be at the top of the heart. I like to think of A at the beginning of the alphabet, so that's why it's at the top. And the ventricles are going to be at the bottom of the heart. I like to think of V at the end of the alphabet, so bottom of the heart. So let's go ahead and fill these in based off of the definitions. So now we're going to go through the great vessels. So there are 4 important vessels in the heart that we will discuss. We'll discuss 2 vessels entering the heart and then 2 vessels that are leaving the heart. So the first vessel that is entering the heart is going to be the superior and the inferior vena cava. The second one entering the heart is going to be the pulmonary vein. The 2 vessels leaving the heart are going to be the aorta and the pulmonary artery. So the superior and inferior vena cava is going to be associated with deoxygenated blood, and the pulmonary vein is going to be associated with oxygen blood. The aorta is associated with oxygenated blood, and the pulmonary artery is associated with deoxygenated blood. So I'm going to go ahead and draw these in. So the superior and inferior vena cava are delivering deoxygenated blood from the rest of the body. The pulmonary veins is going to take oxygenated blood from the heart out. It's going to take oxygenated blood from the heart in. The aorta is going to take oxygenated blood from the heart out, and the pulmonary artery is going to take deoxygenated blood from the heart out. And I'm just writing in the abbreviations right here, that way you guys are able to follow. So next we're going to go through the valves. There are 4 valves that is important to know. So if you haven't noticed, there are pretty much 4 of everything. So the 4 valves that we're going to need to know are going to be the following: the tricuspid valve, the pulmonary valve, the bicuspid or the mitral valve, and then the aortic valve. So the tricuspid and pulmonary valve are going to be associated with deoxygenated blood, so they're going to be on the right side of the heart, and the mitral and aortic valve are going to be associated with oxygenated blood, so they're going to be on the left side of the heart. I'm actually going to write these in purple, that way it doesn't get confusing with all of these chambers, vessels, and valves going in and out of the heart. So I actually have a really cool mnemonic, and it's called Lab Rat. And it can help you to remember the valves, specifically tricuspid and bicuspid. So LAB will stand for the left atrium, which is the bicuspid valve, and the RAT will stand for right atrium, which is tricuspid. And remember, bicuspid is the same thing as the mitral valve. So now we're going to walk through how blood flows through the entire heart. So we're going to go through the pulmonary circulation, and then systemic, and then back through pulmonary. So first things first, we're going to have deoxygenated blood from the body coming in through the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. This is going to connect to the right atrium, which would then go to the tricuspid valve to the right ventricle, which would then go from the pulmonary valve, which would then go to the pulmonary arteries. From here, it would then go to capillaries, specifically capillaries that are in the lungs. And in the lungs, these deoxygenated blood in those capillaries will go through gas exchange to become oxygenated. Once that blood becomes oxygenated, it's then going to leave the capillaries and go to the pulmonary vein, to the left atrium, to the mitric/bicuspid valve, to the left ventricle, then to the aortic valve, and then to the aorta. From here, it will then go to the capillaries, but these are going to be the capillaries in the body. And the blood will then become deoxygenated as it's given as oxygen to the tissues in the body. And now that deoxygenated blood can re-enter via the inferior and superior vena cava, which will then connect at the right atrium. So let's draw this out on the picture so that we're able to follow along. So first things first, we're going to have deoxygenated blood from the top of the body coming in through superior vena cava, and deoxygenated blood from the bottom of the body coming in through the inferior vena cava. All of that deoxygenated blood would then go to the right atrium. It would travel through the tricuspid valve and then go to the right ventricle. This deoxygenated blood will then go through the pulmonary valve and travel through the pulmonary artery. Once it gets to the pulmonary artery, this deoxygenated blood is going to the lungs. It's going to the lungs, that way it can become oxygenated. So once it gets to the lungs, it's going to then go to the capillaries. It will become oxygenated, and once it's oxygenated, it's going to come back to the heart through the pulmonary veins. So then after that, the pulmonary veins will send that oxygenated blood to the left atrium, which will then go through the mitral/bicuspid valve to go to the left ventricle. And then it will go through the aortic valve to go to the aorta, and from the aorta, that oxygenated blood will go to the body to deliver oxygen to the tissues, and the process will happen over and over again. So now let's talk about arteries and veins. So the arteries are going to take blood away from the heart, so A for away, and veins are going to take blood towards the heart. So if we look at this image I've drawn here, we can say that the middle is the lungs, or you can say it's the body, however you want to have it, since we have two capillaries throughout this entire system. So we're going to have deoxygenated blood coming from the body, coming through the inferior vena cava and the superior vena cava. It's then going to go through the right atrium, right ventricle, yada, 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 and eventually it will get to the capillaries in the lungs. In the lungs, that capillary is going to allow for the deoxygenated blood, so that carbon dioxide, to go out and oxygenated blood to come in. When this happens, the blood is now going to turn red, essentially, and then that red blood can then go away from the heart via arteries out through the aorta. So in the middle, I'm showing the capillaries. On the left, we're going to have the arteries, and on the right, we're going to have those veins. You can draw the same process with the body in the middle as the capillaries. So now we're going to talk about coronary arteries and coronary veins. So we know that the body needs its own oxygen, but the heart also needs its own oxygen. So in addition to the oxygenated blood leaving the aorta and going to the body, some of that oxygenated blood is also going to go to the muscles and the heart to supply the heart with oxygen. And then from there, the oxygen will go to the tissues, which will cause it to become deoxygenated, and that deoxygenated blood can travel to the superior vena cava. So essentially the same thing that's happening in the body will also take place in the heart via the coronary arteries and coronary veins. So this image is just showing an overview of everything. So the deoxygenated blood is going to leave the heart to go to the lungs. It will then become oxygenated, re-enter the heart, and then go to the body, and then you'll create deoxygenated blood, which will then go back through the heart, and essentially it's just a cycle going over and over and over again. So now we're going to talk about the cardiac conducting system. So the cardiac conducting system is basically how this heart knows to go through that blood flow. So essentially we're going to have an SA node, which is going to lead to an AV node, which is going to lead to the AV bundles, which is going to lead to bundle branches, and it's going to lead to Purkinje fibers. Don't worry, I'm about to explain it all now. So the SA node is going to be innervated by the autonomic nervous system, and it's going to essentially cause that electrical impulse to go from the autonomic nervous system to the SA node, which will then go to the AV node, which will then go to these AV bundles, which would then go to the bundle branches, which would then go to the Purkinje fibers. And once it gets to the Purkinje fibers, it will cause the heart to contract. And so that's how the heart knows to continue to pump, via the autonomic nervous system. And this is happening on both sides of the heart.